So, hello and welcome everyone. Thank you very much for your time today. Nice to be back at Mobility Field Day, like my fifth one, if I remember correctly. And hey, my name is Julio Petrovitch, Product Manager at NetAlly. And today we'll be talking a little about AirMapper Site Survey and the latest product enhancements that we've introduced. Uh, Anything from what we introduced a few months ago to what we just introduced like yesterday. So, as you guys know, AirMapper was introduced last year. Basically, it allows you to perform a site survey using one of our handheld devices, like the AirCheck G2 or EtherScope NXG, and removes the need of that old school or legacy mode of walking around with a laptop, a tablet, and so on, or using dongles. Makes it easier. At least that's what we think and our customers agree with. So, but hey, that was last year. And over time, we've been introducing lots of enhancements to the AirMapper ecosystem and the functionality, not only on the handhelds themselves, but also on the cloud or Link Live. So what I'm going to do today is that first we'll start going back in time a little, do a little recap on some of the enhancements we have introduced. And then after that, we'll talk a little about the new stuff, and then we'll show you that stuff live, well, on a quick demo. So one of the bigger enhancements that we introduced earlier this year is the AirMapper project management functionality through Link Live, which basically allows you to create a site survey project on the cloud and make that collaboration easier with the site surveyors. So basically, the guy that's out there on the field and is going to do the site survey doesn't need to be like an expert anymore. He doesn't need to know how to calibrate an image, for example, or he doesn't need to know what type of signal propagation he needs to use. You can do all those settings remotely for them, create that project, and then just send it over. And then the person that's on the field just needs to walk around and tap on the screen. So we've simplified that workflow to make it easier for everyone to collaborate. And I'll show you how this looks like in a few moments and how it works. Then another thing we introduced, and this was a little more recently, and I think some of you may already know about it, but basically on May 12th, we introduced the first integrated BluetoothBLE site survey solution on the EtherScope. So now, not only can you do active or passive Wi-Fi site surveys with your EtherScope NXG, so it has two Wi-Fi radios, you can also do a Bluetooth or BLE site survey in parallel or at the same time. And the way it works is pretty straightforward, guys. Basically, just turn on the Bluetooth radio on your EtherScope. And I'll show you how to do that in a few moments during the live demo. But basically, the idea is that now in parallel, where you're doing your Wi-Fi active, Wi-Fi passive, or you're doing a dual survey with both radios, Wi-Fi active and passive at the same time, you can also perform a Bluetooth or BLE site survey. And the process is very similar, or basically identical to what you will do with the Wi-Fi site survey. But of course, now instead of collecting Wi-Fi data, you're collecting Bluetooth data. And the idea is to do more on the same walkthrough. And then you upload that data to Link Live, and again, I'll show you how that looks like to do your analysis. And it will be very similar to what you will do with a Wi-Fi site survey. You have multiple filtering options. You'll be able to see details about all the BLE devices or Bluetooth devices in the area. Notice that one of the bigger differences is that instead of Wi-Fi information, you'll see Bluetooth information. Then all that is cool. And I know you guys will be like, okay, hey, that's all nice stuff, stuff that was introduced a couple of months ago. But what's next? What's the new stuff that got introduced like yesterday? Well, there's a few enhancements that we introduced, mostly on the Link Live side of things for AirMapper. As I mentioned, this was just like yesterday, so you can just log in right now. Well, maybe not right now. I'm hoping you're paying attention to this session. But after this session, you can log in and check them out. But basically, we've done a few things. Number one, we improved the performance of generating both heat maps and reports. So as more people start using Link Live, or started using Link Live to do basically generate heat maps from their AirMapper site surveys, and we noticed that it wasn't only like small projects with a few data points. There were sometimes these giant warehouses with thousands of data points. And well, generating the heat maps or the speed for generating the heat maps may not have been the best. So we paid attention to what our customers asked, and we've improved the speed or the performance of generating heat maps. If I remember correctly, it's about 3 times faster than it used to be. And of course, over time, we'll continue to make more improvements to that. Same thing with the reports. Sometimes you create, I don't know, one template. Yeah, that was okay. But then there were cases where you had to create 10 different templates and include them on a single report. And that may have taken longer to generate the report. Well, that problem ain't there anymore. Basically, reports will load a lot faster or be created a lot faster than in the past. So a great improvement that will also allow us to move, and this is more of a roadmap thing, so to move towards the ability of not only doing the tap to save type of survey, but also doing the auto sampling type of survey, where, hey, the software, same as the Air Magnet software, for example, when you walk, you'll collect data points automatically. Now that we can handle a lot more data points and generate the heat maps a lot faster, we'll be able to move toward that methodology of auto sampling and process all that data a lot quicker. And then another thing that you may have noticed we do almost on a monthly basis is that we keep adding user interface improvements. And I'll be showing you some of this during the demo in a few moments, but basically in this release, we added the option, for example, to copy table cells. So you can do a copy and paste now of the data. So if you wanted to copy information into a spreadsheet, for example, or a Word document, you can do that. We've also made it easier to filter. Now you'll be able to, instead of unselect all and select what you want, you can just double click on a specific option, and that will automatically unselect everything and just select the option that you want. So little details that make your life easier while analyzing your site survey data. And then we've also added the option of editing a lot of the information. So you can, for example, change the site survey name project, or you could edit other information on the project. And there's a few other small items, and we'll look at that here on the demo. And talking about demo, it's about that time. So instead of going through a lot of slideware, let's do the live thing and see how it really looks like. Okay, so let's start on the screen here. So I'm sure all of you guys are familiar with this part. This is Link Live. Basically, this is where you will do your analysis for the site survey data and where you can create a new site survey projects. So first, let me show you how to create a new survey project to make it pretty simple. So first, from the AirMapper section here on the left side of the screen, go to the lower right, you'll see a little purple icon with a plus sign. Just click in there. From here, the first option is to basically manage floor plans. This will allow you, or will take you to this section on which you can basically create a new survey. So if I go, for example, to the lower right to create new floor plan, then in here I can do, for example, something like that. And I can add a label if I wanted to make it easier to find. Then I can just drag and drop a floor plan, let's say something like this. So now I have my floor plan here, and I want to calibrate that floor plan. Notice that if you know the width and height, yeah, you can just enter those. But for most people, it's easier to just do the calibration. So in that case, let's say I know the distance from here to, let's say, around here. Let's try again. There you go. Then I know that this is about 17 feet, if I remember correctly. Do a set calibration. And now I have my width and height. Then as for signal propagation, as you guys know, this is a very important one to be able to accurately perform a survey. Let's say for this case, I want to use 10 feet. Of course, you can change between feet and meters. In this case, I'll leave it as feet. Then do publish. And
What
now
are
when I
your
go back,
options on the map, sir?
Yes.
What files can you take?
Oh, sorry, can you repeat that again?
What files can you take for your maps?
Oh,
Is it just PNG?
Currently JPEG and BMP.
I'm sorry, did you say drawing files?
Yep, so let's go. Sorry, PNG and JPEG.
JPEG, okay. Any plans on adding CAD support or anything like it?
That's a great question. We are always adding new formats, and CAD is one of those that we plan to add in the future.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure, no problem. Great question. Thank you. Then, now that your project has been created, you'll see it here on the list of site survey projects. And you have the option of sending it to multiple units or all your units. So for example, let's say that you have this big warehouse. And sure, you could do a site survey by yourself, but it may take a few days. So instead of doing that, you have like, I don't know, 3 coworkers with you. And each one will do a section of the warehouse. So you can send the same project to all their units or specific units if you have more. And then each one can go and do a section of the warehouse. And then when they're done, upload those results back, and you can merge them into a single project. For this example, though, I'll just send this project to my EtherScope. Then apply. Notice that it could be both EtherScope or AirChecks.
Yeah, I've got a quick question.
Yeah, sure.
Obviously, at the moment, this is just a single floor. Are there any plans to have like buildings with multiple floors?
Good question. So we get that request a lot. Currently, you can do that through the AirMagnet software. So you could, for example, download your AirMapper project into or open it on AirMagnet and use the multi-floor functionality there. As for the cloud, it is something I hope we'll be adding also in the future. So it's on the list as we make more and more enhancements to the cloud. One thing, some of those of you guys that are or have had experience with the AirMagnet software in the past is that you may notice that over time, almost on a monthly basis, we keep transferring little things or little functionality that, hey, people is used to because of the AirMagnet software, and we'll be slowly making it to Link Live also. So as time goes, you'll see more of that functionality, like the multi-floor, for example, making it to the cloud too. Okie doke. So now that I already sent my project to my EtherScope, so let's go to the EtherScope side of things. As you guys know, or may know, I'm using Link Live to just remotely connect into my EtherScope. And one thing you'll see here after you send a project to the EtherScope, there's 2 things. One, on the AirMapper icon, you'll see this little blue dot on top of it that tells you that there's a new project waiting for you. Or if you go to the notifications bar here at the top, you'll see this little icon, it's like the AirMapper icon, that also tells you there's a new project. Notice that you can just scroll that down and see more details. So you can see the second tab or option there. There's AirMapper, new floor plan from Link Live. And it has the name of the project, in this case, MFD6. So anyway, Sam here. One more thing I need to show you. So as you guys know, the EtherScope has multiple Wi-Fi radios and the Bluetooth radio. So there's the scan radio, which is this tab in here, basically is telling you or showing you as the test radio scans through the channels. There's also the second Wi-Fi radio, which is represented by this icon on the upper left of the screen. So notice that if you want to use the second radio, you basically need to enable it by just clicking on it. So if it's black like this, that means it's on. If it's grayed out like some of these other options, that means it's off. Notice that after you turn it on, you can connect to any network that you want to perform an active survey on. And that basically enables the option of doing an active survey with the second Wi-Fi radio. And then the same logic applies to the Bluetooth radio. Basically, if you turn on the Bluetooth radio, that will allow you to perform a Bluetooth site survey in parallel while using one Wi-Fi radio for an active survey and the second Wi-Fi radio for a passive survey. And notice that you could do two active surveys at the same time if you wanted to, or Wi-Fi surveys at the same time if you wanted to. It's pretty cool because basically you can see the differences between how the network looks like if you're using, for example, a 4x4 radio compared to a 1x1 radio. It's interesting. You can see a fair difference between, for example, how the signal strength or the coverage looks like between a 1x1 and a 4x4. And of course, that affects the data rates or the connection rates. So anyway, that's how simple it is to turn on the Bluetooth survey option. Just make sure the icon is black instead of gray like this. So in this case, or this example, I'll be doing 3 surveys at the same time since I'll be using one radio for the passive, another one for the active, and then the Bluetooth site survey or the Bluetooth radio for the Bluetooth survey. Then let's go to AirMapper. From here, I already have the project loaded, but notice that if you have multiple projects, you can use the settings option and go to the floor plan option here. And here you can select any of the floor plans or projects that you want. For example, I can see MFD6 in here. So I'll select that one. Then I'll go back. If you want, you can add any descriptions you prefer. Notice that here's where you can change between active or passive if you want. Another thing that's pretty important, and some people doesn't think too much about, is that you have the option of changing how the Wi-Fi radio behaves. So you can select which channels to scan, for how long to scan each channel. You can select 1 band or 2 bands. We can select the roaming threshold. So basically, you can do that in here. And also, you can overwrite what's pre-configured for the normal Wi-Fi testing and have two different profiles, one for the testing and one for the surveys. You also notice that you can save multiple profiles. So if you have like a setting where you do both active or to passive, or a setting for 2.4 only, or a settings or a profile for 5 gigahertz only, you can save multiple profiles and load them as needed. So anyway, now let's say I'm done here.
Can you elaborate on what you mean by selecting the roaming?
Yes. So when it comes to roaming, basically you can tell the radio to roam at X threshold. Basically, for example, if I remember correctly, the default, for example, on an air check is minus 75 dBm. Still, there's other devices that will try roaming or start looking for a new AP to roam to at minus 65 or minus 67, for example. So you can change that threshold on both the air check and the EtherScope and tell it, hey, I want you to behave more like this smartphone here, and look for a new AP at minus 65 dBm instead of minus 75 dBm. And
how configurable is that? And do you have like preset profiles, say, just in case it's harder to find a certain algo for certain clients?
Good question. Currently, we don't have like a pre-configured roaming device list or profile. Like, hey, this is how an iPhone does it, or this is how an Android does it, or this is an iPhone 5 versus an iPhone 10. But you have the option of just selecting the value itself. So you will have to do your research, basically. to find, hey, this type of device roams at X signal strength, or it starts looking for an IP to roam at X signal strength, and you can pre-configure that. It's a request we get a lot, though, to have like a list of, I guess, common devices in there. Okie doke. So anyway, moving on then. Oops, I went too far. There we go. So now, basically, next step, just tap on Start. Notice one thing we added recently is this little pop-up down here, which basically tells you which surveys are you doing. In this case, as I mentioned earlier, I'll be doing active, passive, and Bluetooth all on the same walkthrough. And then now you just go through a normal process. So just say I want to start here, and just walk around the site, collecting your data. And I'm sure everyone here knows best practices on how to perform a site survey, so I won't bore you with those details. But basically, just walk and collect the data throughout the site. Notice, and just for those that didn't know, you can tap anywhere on the screen, tap and hold, and basically add a comment if you want. So if you want to highlight, hey, someone put a Miller rack in front of this access point, or I noticed this cable hanging here. So you can add those comments in there. Those will get uploaded to Link Live. You can also undo if you need to. For example, you tap on the wrong place. And of course, when you stop, you also have the option of like, the stop options like in both stop and pause. So if you wanted to resume, you could do that and just continue later. And then, of course, you have the option of, when you're done, uploading the results back to Link Live. Or as I mentioned earlier, you could just save the data locally and export that into AirMagnet Survey Pro if you prefer to use that tool for your analysis. For this example, though, today we'll just be uploading the data back to Link Live. And you can add any comments you want. There's an old comment I have here, so let's remove that.
So here, another question. So I've done a few of these. I originally made the mistake of coming out of the survey by accident, and then I went to go back in and all my data had gone. Is that just a one-off thing, or is that something that is an accident?
Yeah. Was that on the AirCheck or the EtherScope?
That was on the EtherScope.
Yeah, so let me save this here very quickly. That's on its way to Link Live. So basically, if you go, for example, back to the home screen, something like that, you should be able to go back and the data will still be there.
No, sorry. I actually came. So I swapped from. So I had one map. I had done a floor of a building.
Mm-hmm.
I then went to, second floor of that building, did it, and I hadn't uploaded in between, and I lost my data from the original floor.
I see what you did there. So you change floor plans or projects, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. In that case, every time you move from one project to another or floor plan to another, you need to make sure you save the data or upload it to Link Live or save it locally if you prefer before moving between projects, because that data is not saved into memory or on the buffer. It's saved temporarily, but as soon as you switch project, we clean the buffer and basically start anew. So, great question though. That's a good one there.
Yeah. Speaking of the buffer, is there a hard limit on how many data points you can take in one go?
Nope. Basically, as many as you can collect. So there's no limit for the number of data points, nor, and this is a common question I get all the time, the size of the floor plan either. Also, one thing that's pretty cool about the EtherScope is that not only do you have the internal, if I remember correctly, it's 3 gigs of memory, but you can also use a little SD card to expand that too. So. Okie doke. So now that I uploaded this to Link Live, let's go back to Link Live. And again, I like highlighting this, but using the little tabs is pretty useful because you can have multiple screens going to link live. And if you have multiple monitors, you can have like one tab on one monitor, another tab on another monitor. And it makes it easier to analyze data going back and forth and stuff. So anyway, if I go back to my AirMapper screen, we'll see my project here. And this one doesn't have a lot of information, so I'll switch to this other project I got here that has more data. And from here, you have a few options. You have the option of just exporting. Notice one difference for those that have been using AirMapper already is that with the update we did yesterday, we basically changed a little the order of the options. We also clarified some of them. For example, in the past here, instead of Wi-Fi survey, I think it just said survey by itself. And it was confusing because you had BLE survey and just survey. So now you have a BLE survey, Wi-Fi survey, and the option to export. And notice the option to export can be used in two different ways. One, to export the data into AirMagnet Survey Pro to do analysis locally, or to export the data and share it with someone else. So that's one of the cool things about Link Live being free and not being tied to support nor anything, is that, hey, you have a customer, they want access to the project, and they want to do their own analysis, maybe generate their own reports. So instead of having them having to buy let's say a software license to be able to do analysis, or having to download a viewer, they just create a view or a free Link Live account, and you just do export in here. That will download the file. You can email it to them or share it with them as you prefer, and they can just open it on their free Link Live account and do their own analysis. So it makes it easier to share projects with customers or coworkers for that matter. So anyway, that's the export option there. Then the other option, of course, is to look at the Wi-Fi survey data. As I mentioned earlier, one of the enhancements we did is that it's now faster to generate the heat maps. So if you switch between heat maps, for example, from signal to, let's say, I don't know, SNR, for example, it will take a lot less time than it used on the past. More, and you'll notice it more with those bigger projects that have lots of data points on them.
How are you all getting the SNR, sir?
I'm sorry?
How are you getting the SNR? Are you assuming a static noise floor, or?
No, we measure both the signal and the noise, and then calculate the SNR. So you have the option of looking at signal, it's measured, the noise levels, which are also measured. So the Wi-Fi radio on the EtherScope has different from, for example, USB dongles or Wi-Fi radio on inside a laptop, has the ability of measuring noise. And basically, we use that to calculate the SNR. So it's actual noise, measured noise, not a predicted value or something like that.
Thank you.
Sure. Then going to some of the enhancements we've done, basically, for example, let's say I want to select that area there. Besides the UI looking a little better, like I mentioned earlier, you have the option of just copying and pasting if you want. So if you want to copy the data on the table, you can do that. You also have the option of moving things around. So let's say I care more about SNR than noise. So I can swap options in there. Or let's say that, hey, you want to keep the security information always available so you can see it. So you can do something like this. And now when you go back and forth, that part won't move. So they're like little things, but make it easier to analyze or go through the data. A little customization options, you would say, and make it easier. Also another thing, notice, and we added this not so long ago, really. You have the option of just adding comments directly. So you'll notice this little icon here, the little eye. So it tells you, hey, do control click to add new comments. So now if you wanted to add a new comment here, and you can do that too. So not only can you add comments from the unit and then see those here, but you can also add comments here directly, or you can just edit the comment that was done on the field. So if you notice a typo and you're like, I don't want to show that on a report, let's edit and fix that comment. You can do that, or you can just remove comments and delete them too if you want. So little things that make your life easier while analyzing the data. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention is that one thing we introduced yesterday is the option to change the name of a project. So in the past, hey, the name was set, and after the survey was done, well, there's no way to change it. But now, after the survey data has been uploaded, you can change the name of the project too if you want. Let's see. Okay, yeah, moving on. So that's are some of the enhancements we've done. Then the other part, of course, is the Bluetooth survey. So I did both my Wi-Fi active and passive. That will show up under the Wi-Fi survey data. Oops, let's look at a better example here. This one here. But at the same time, or in parallel, you can also do the Bluetooth survey. And when you look at it the first time, it looks very similar to a Wi-Fi survey. You have the option of looking at the path, adding comments, just highlighting the values. But then when you start looking at the details, for example, you'll notice that the information that's included is not Wi-Fi related. So for example, you'll see address information. Or you'll see beacon names. You also see beacon types. So for example, Eddystone, which is what Android devices use. Or you can use see iBeacon. There's other types that will show up as unknown, but are also visible. So basically what we do is that not only do we see that Bluetooth or BLE beacon in the air and measure the RSSI or the signal for it, but we also parse through that beacon and extract a lot of the data that's available on it. And the importance here is that, hey, let's say, for example, you're using Bluetooth or BLE beacons for location services. And this may be better if I filter here. So let's filter pretty quickly and look at here. And let's say I only want to look at this couple of, not that one. So I want to look at this one, this one, this one, and this one here. My mouse is getting a little crazy, so let's just use the tab here. There we go. You see her there. And apply. So let's say I just want to look at those 4 beacons or test beacons that I dropped throughout my site. Then I can just click. Now I only see information about those beacons in there. In this case, the way I configured them is that they're transmitting multiple beacon types. So you can see Eddystone UID, Eddystone URL. They're also transmitting iBeacons. And there's another type that's just also known here. So it's a proprietary type for the beacons I was using for this demo. And for each beacon type, you'll see different pieces of information. So for example, for Eddystone UID, you'll see Eddystone namespace. You can also see Eddystone instance. Meanwhile, for Eddystone URL, basically you'll see the URL that's configured on that beacon type. When it comes to iBeacons, you'll see company name, company ID, iBeacon UUID, major ID, minor ID. And the importance of these values is that they're basically used to highlight the location of the beacon itself. So for example, the minor ID could be used to say, I don't know, let's say in a store, aisle 1. And the major ID could be used to say rack 2, for example. Meanwhile, the UUID is just only what store number it is. And one of the things that one must keep in mind is that technically each beacon should have unique values because they're placed in different locations throughout the store. So if you see something like this, where all of them have been configured the same way, that's a problem there. So having this information, just in this case, for example, highlights, hey, a configuration error that was done while deploying those beacons. Instead of configuring each beacon with unique information or location information, someone just left all the default values in there. And of course, that will cause problems when you're trying to use the beacons to locate devices throughout the site. So pretty useful information. And there's more information if you keep scrolling to the right. There's a lot more data available too for each of the Bluetooth devices in the area. Okie doke. So that's how the BluetoothBLE part works, guys. You'll notice that if you wanted to find the location of the beacons, you can use the legend to gray out the weaker signals. And just highlight the stronger ones so you can see there's my 4 beacons in there. So you know where they are. Basically, one on almost each corner of the building.
So Julio, quick question for you on use cases. Would you see this feature being used by engineers that want to validate like in like new access point that is set up that now has the BLE radios built in, or would you see this used more to locate like client devices, make sure they're configured properly to operate with the system?
I would say all of the above. One, to validate that beacon about BLE configuration on the access points. If you're going to use those access points for location services, same as when you configure Wi-Fi, you want to validate it's been configured correctly, mostly with the location information. And if you're using other beacons to basically improve coverage on this site, then that's one use case. Another use case could be like for security. Hey, should there be any Bluetooth devices on this area? Or should I only see X Bluetooth devices on this area or BLE devices on the area? Am I detecting something that shouldn't be there? And where is it located at? Or you could also use it, as you mentioned, more for the client side of things and also validate those. So technically, there's multiple use cases. And reality is, if you guys come up with another idea, hey, feel free to let us know. But basically, getting this type of visibility can be used in multiple ways.
I've got a quick question on the BLE. Are you able to visualize the number? So once you've filtered on, say, your BLE beacons, let's say, are you able to then visualize how many you can hear above a certain signal strength in any one location?
Yes. So basically, let's say I want to look at this area here. So in here, basically, I can see a list of all the beacons that I'm seeing from this location and their transmit power, let's say that one. And you can see, for example, I'm seeing EBT4, EBT2, EBT3, EBT1, and seeing all 4 of them from this location on this site. And you can see based on the RSSI, which one is closer to you. So EBT1 seems to be the closest one.
I'm just wondering if you could like heat map it, because I'm thinking, let's say you're designing a BLE location system where you've got to be able to see at least 3 beacons from each location. You don't have to click every location, just be able to see a map that shows, you know, grey where I haven't got 3, green when I have, or something like that. I'm just wondering if that's...
So let me see if I understood that one there. So basically, like, yeah, can go ahead and repeat that again so I can think about it a little more.
Yeah, so I guess what I'm getting is a heat map where I can see, let's say I have a requirement to be able to see 3 beacons in every location on the entire map. I want to know, is there any areas where I can only see 2 or I can only see 1? Because that'll play on my location.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. That's very similar to what we do on the Wi-Fi side.
Yeah.
So let's see here. For example, on the Wi-Fi side, let's go back to my example. So on the Wi-Fi side, we have a heat map that we call AP coverage, and I need to select a specific SSID for that. So let's do that very super quickly. Well, let's say I want to look at this one here. Apply. So on the Wi-Fi side of things, you can select a specific SSID and then go to what we call AP coverage. And this basically shows you how many APs that are part of that SSID you can see on a specific area. This is the worst of examples because I can see all 4 APs everywhere. So they have excessive power or coverage in this case. But basically, you can just mouse over and we'll show you how you can see 4 APs that are part of the SSID in here. So for the case of Bluetooth, go ahead.
That's the idea, just with Bluetooth.
Yeah, in the case of Bluetooth, we don't have that option yet. Still, that is a great idea. And well, I think we'll add it to the list.
Julio, can you go back to that last screen you were just on when you showed the 4 APs?
Yeah, let me do that.
My question is, while you're there showing 4 APs, can you adjust the slider to see, say we wanted 4 above neg 60?
Yes, so let's go back there. Here it is. Let's give it a moment. Oops, I'm on the wrong heat map. And should be looking at AP coverage. Okie doke. So
this one's showing count, but
yeah,
can you do count with that threshold?
Yeah, that's a good point. So let's say you want to look at those that overlap. I don't know, minus 55, let's say, as an example here. And then let's change this here. So, yes, you can. So now, basically, for example, on this corner.
Just turn on values. Turn on values and turn off path.
Oh, yeah, that will make it a little easier to see. There you go.
Turn off path.
There you go. So, for example, one thing you can see here, and that's a great question, Keith. So, if I look at only minus 55 dBm, I can see there's in this area, there's only 1 AP covering that area with a minus 55 dBm signal or stronger. Then if I go to this area here, there's 2 APs covering that area at that strength. When I get closer to the middle of the building, since the APs are basically on each corner, I can see all 4 of them at that signal. So yeah, that was a good question. Yeah.
Set the threshold down to 65 just real quick.
There we go. Yep. As I mentioned, this is one of the worst case scenarios because it was very badly designed. You can see the APs, almost all 4 APs in every corner of the building. A little too much overlap, if you ask me. But yeah, going back to the earlier question, it will be, it's a great idea to add that on that same functionality on the Bluetooth side of things. And I think that's something, we could indeed consider.
All right. I think we're going to have to wrap it there because we are past the time. So, Julio, do you have one last thing to wrap up?
Nope, I think that covers everything, guys. Thank you very much for your time today. Thank you for joining us at Mobility Field Day 6. And hey, if you have any questions for us later, feel free to go to Twitter and send those there. Regretfully, since we're not on site with everyone, we can't just, hey, meet later and chat about it. But hey, you know where to find us. And hey, thank you for your time.